What are we talking about this week?
Stuff.
Yeah, what kind of things?
Ideally useful stuff.
For musicians.
Particularly to musicians. So we're not going to talk about caffeine for the first 3 minutes.
I could do with the coffee though.
You got this Insta thing that is nice and precise and actionable and immediately useful. Some Spotify stuff.
Spotify and Shopify.
Spotify and Shopify.
Shopify.
The Fi's. We're going to continue our journey down the Bitcoin disco metaverse.
That exciting world.
Yeah, the exciting world of getting money for your music. That's pretty exciting.
Forever.
Some of the corporate stuff can get a bit yawn, but money. Doing what you love.
Well, all these things ultimately that we're going to talk about are about how you can increase your chances of making a living of a musician. Money's quite useful to that. Audience is quite useful to that.
Very, yeah.
And the reason we talk about social media a lot on this podcast is because that's the main way you're going to communicate with those people to convert them into people that give you money or give you engagement, which helps you make a living doing what you love.
Yeah.
So I think there's a million things that have happened since we recorded the last show that we thought might be useful to talk about. So we have actually done some prep, team. We do care about you enough to actually try and break it down, have a few tiffs, and try and decide what is most important and most relevant to talk about. And
you say we, you mean me.
Ironically, one of them is something we're still having a tiff about, whether or not it is useful for you. So we came to this happy medium of a significant thing has happened over the past few weeks. It's actually in the past 7 days as we record this, where we think, or at least I think, there is something in it that is useful for a musician to be aware of.
Where are you going with this? Sounds like you're going to say something really dodgy. You're
Oh, no,
putting all these
dodgy.
different
It's
conditions
about one of the
and
biggest
terms.
companies in the world. I'm not trying to
this is the
mask
meta
it.
thing.
This is the meta thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
masking it in innuendo or anything.
Okay, it sounded like it was going to be something quite dodgy.
No. This isn't MI5.
Okay.
This is the fact. Loads of
parts of your
people.
life.
I imagine the majority of our audience will have had this come into their social feeds and their awareness at some point. They might not have understood what was going on, which is rightfully so, because I didn't really understand what was going on until I processed it properly.
So we're going to do the Instagram thing.
Yeah.
We're going to do the Spotify thing. We're going to do the NFT thing, but you want to start with...
I think talking about this story is the most important thing for us, number one thing to talk about as a priority, because even if we just spend 2 or 3 minutes on it, breaking down what it is and why it's important, it almost gives validity to all the other things we talk about. Because what we're essentially talking about here is one of the biggest companies in the world saying we are going to focus on this thing because we think it's where the world is going. And so many things we have already talked about on the show, we'll talk about on this specific episode, and we'll continue to talk about in future episodes, will be in this world. And that is the fact that Facebook, one of the most influential companies in the world, and company is important there because we're not talking about the social media platform, we are talking about the company Facebook, have rebranded to the very nice and simple Meta.
I'm a bit disappointed they didn't go for the Bitcoin ETF Discoverse.
It was trademarked. We trademarked it.
We made our pitch last month, didn't we?
We forgot to send them the trademark letter. So,
okay.
So Facebook has rebranded, and we've already, one actionable point we'll do from this is there's a kind of 3-minute summary video by the boss of Instagram, which we think is really, really useful.
Yeah,
a good way of
good.
expressing it that gets rid of all the jargon and just expresses it in a way that you guys will understand. So we'll link that below. So that should, if you are interested after what we talk about here, go and watch that because it'll give you even more insight. And I think it expresses it with some really good examples that you might not have kind of processed if you saw the hour-long Zuckerberg one, which is very confusing and robot-esque.
And terrifying.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Do you think that was his pitch to be the next Bond villain?
Well, do you know what it is? I refuse to believe that isn't orchestrated. He's one of the smartest men in the world. Like, I don't understand how people can think that's not all a ploy. Within seconds, people are sharing it and memeing it, and that's what they want. Don't be a part of the problem, man. Anyway, helping musicians. So the reason we want to talk about it, Facebook has rebranded to Meta. Meta being short for Metaverse. Metaverse being a million different things, but it's this new world that a lot of people, organizations, predictors think we're moving into over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years of
25
essentially the world, everything being a bit more interactive. That is one of the main words that they use is interactivity. One of the ways Mr. Instagram describes it is we've gotten used to kind of just tapping rectangles on our phone, and soon we're going to be in the worlds that are in those rectangles. I'm not going to go on the world of trying to explain what that means. Again, if you're interested, watch the video in the description. But what it does mean is that all the crypto NFT stuff we talked about in the last episode, and we'll talk about in a bit, all of the examples that we've given about why the NFT and crypto stuff is important, because ownership and people tipping and people engaging with you in ways that they haven't been able to engage with you before. Basically, Facebook has gone, yeah, we know that's going to be big. We want to be a bit part of that, literally to the point that we're going to change our company name to be a part of it. So is there much actionable right now?
And strategy.
Yeah.
It's not just, well, some cynics will say, is this just a rebrand? And there is part of that. You may or may not want to get into the whole, are they just doing this to try and distract from the fact that half the countries in the world want to sue their ass? But it's also strategy change across, I think, 4 companies: Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Oculus.
Correct.
Are the 4 big companies.
Yeah.
Google did something like this in 2015.
Yeah.
They changed to Alphabet. With hindsight, actually, there wasn't that much behind it. It doesn't look like. Whereas this, it feels like there's more. Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp are all staying.
Correct.
Those 3 brands. But Oculus is changing to Meta.
True. And that's because they expect a lot of the way you'll interact with it will be through.
So in case you don't know what Oculus is, that is the virtual reality stuff, isn't it?
Thing you stick on your head and you end up in a magical world,
Yeah.
That is the Black Mirror stuff, but the soon becoming very real Black Mirror stuff. But right now, again, I don't think the people listening to this really need to be worried too much about the details of that.
What is the relevance of this to musicians?
I think the relevance of this to musicians is 2 things. One is you could not, and we record this 4 days after this news is broke, I think. This episode will come out a week later. I mean, it definitely is going to be one of the biggest news stories of the year. There's no doubt in those year round.
It's a big news story.
Correct.
But for musicians.
Because all of the things we talk about being ahead of the curve so you can take advantage of all that attention as it gets...
You said 25 years in your intro to this.
I said 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Actually,
there's ahead of the curve, and then there's like the whole different shape.
Well, a lot of people in that world always use the phrase bullish, don't they? Oh, I'm being bullish on this. I'm being bullish on this. And I think part of it is, it's going to be a while before this is your mum's asking you how many NFTs you have and all that kind of stuff. But actually, there is a chance that your mum might be asking to go and watch a movie with you in the metaverse before she's asking you what NFTs you have. And that's part of it. There's at least a case. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but I'm saying there is at least a case with how quickly that is happening. For context, maybe it's just that thing. What's it called when you learn something or you see something and then you become aware of it way more? And it doesn't mean it's happening anymore. It just means that your brain is picking up on the indicators that were there.
That is your reticular activation system, I believe, RAS. So when you become aware of something, your brain stops filtering it out, which makes you feel like you're seeing it more often.
Yeah. So that, for example, even since Thursday, I've seen like 3 or 4 DJs that I follow going, oh, I'm doing a live stream in this private metaverse world. And it's not the Facebook one, like these independent ones. Nottingham's actually had a big one for ages, the Lockwood one. I can't remember.
The Lockwood Publishing people based in Confetti their sign is still on there. I saw it.
They've moved to the train station.
Okay.
Breaking Nottingham.
Breaking Nottingham business, where they're based and what their accurate address is news. And we nearly did FSM with them in like 2016 or something, didn't we?
Super Furniture have played in there as a prize of being a part of the Super Sound of Nottingham. Future Sound of Nottingham, those lucky boys.
And they've been massive in Alabama ever since.
So I think the key thing is watch this video if you're interested. I think it genuinely, just being aware of what the metaverse is and thinking about it, it could be as soon as a year that genuinely it is both an income stream and also just almost an expectation.
An income stream for musicians within 12 months.
I think so.
How?
But all of the things virtual gigs, the tipping, there's already talk about like you can pre-record the character avatar, I think is the official term, but the avatar of your musician. Like you can
That means digital identity.
Digital character, which will be based on you and system degree.
So you as an individual musician or you as your band could have your own digital identity within the Facebook. Because you not mentioned something really significant.
What's
There's a couple of... Facebook's population is 3 billion odd people.
Yeah, it's like literally half the planet.
Or more, but it's getting towards 80 or 90% of the people who are on the internet.
Correct. Yeah, and it's great. And again, if you watch this Instagram video, one of their pictures, their wholesome side of it is, my family all across the world will be able to watch a movie together. It'll be all so interactive and stuff.
They'll probably charge you.
Exactly. How much you believe that? Like, we're not talking about that. We are just talking about the fact that there is going to be literally a new type of internet at some point in the next probably 5 to 10 years when it's mainstream. And over the next few years, it's going to become more and more a common thing, more and more integrated into like platforms that already exist. And the point I was getting to is like some of these metaverses and worlds that already exist, you can almost pre-program your character. So you're sleeping and your fan pays a tenner to go and hang out with you. And it's just some fucking things you've already pre-recorded.
Yeah.
It's a bit lame. everyone will have their own opinion on that. But that's the thing that you can do. You can spend an hour pre-recording, hey, insert name, happy birthday, da, 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 da. And someone might pay a tenner for that, and you wake up and you just got a tenner for that birthday song you sang to someone that you didn't sing, or just stuff like that.
It sounds absolutely terrifying and horrible.
It's Black Mirror. Fucking crazy.
I want to turn all my technology off.
Got 2 devices right there.
Yeah, I had it here, just so I can symbolically turn it all off.
I think it obviously is scary, but also I think like most of the people that will say they're scared of it are using it in so many other ways as well. So it's that thing, like, if you're going to detox it, if you are going to fucking go and live on a cliff somewhere without any devices, fair dues to your respect. But if you are actually using multiple computers all the time, you just think you don't want to use Facebook, for example, then you're almost just self-harming at that point, because you're still being tracked, you're still being traced.
Well, we're separating between your personal life and your career, and we're all about helping musicians. It's going to be there. It's getting harder to get to the making and living level as a musician without embracing this technology to some degree.
I think in the majority of countries, I don't see how you could without it to some degree now, because without using those platforms, I don't really see how you're going to, short of the few exceptions of bands that are massively popular in their hometown, so they just see the poster in the local pub and stuff. Like, obviously there will be a few extremes like that. I just really don't see how that's maybe old school like group chats and stuff, or a mailing list, but that's still in a form, just an old school form of social media, social mailing.
You're starting to get into the non-Facebook perspectives on the metaverse, and one of the, so we may want to hold this for later or even another show, is
pre-sale.
One of the reasons Facebook is making such an aggressive land grab for the metaverse, I think, this is the more bigger picture stuff, is that it knows it's got direct competition from the classics, like the Googles and that malarkey, but it's also got the possibilities that have been opened up by blockchain technology that are going to allow individuals and much smaller groups and communities to interact with each other without having to involve the big corporate behemoths. So that's some good news. If you want to be a cult underground artist and not use the man, we're also moving towards a space technology-wise where that's going to be more possible. And you're not going to have to pay Zuckerberg to reach your own fans that you spent 2 or 3 years building up on his platform.
Speaking of Zuckerberg, should we move on to another one of his platforms?
Another one of his platforms, yeah.
So,
which have done something helpful for musicians.
Yes, and quite easy, I think, and it is quite significant. By the time the show comes out, every Instagram user should have this. I'm using the word should there because Facebook and Instagram notoriously can roll things out, and a few people can be missing them and being like, why don't I have this feature? And there's no good reason, really. But basically, as we record this, Instagram has now one of the most wanted features in all of social media land. Can you put a link on your Instagram story? No, you need at least 10,000 followers to activate it. Woohoo! I would go as far to say that is genuinely a chance, not that there's a massively long list, probably the most wanted feature on social media platforms, or at least the one that is most complained about of why do I not have it. Yeah. It used to be this exclusive club of you need 10,000 followers to activate it. Or pay, because I'm sorry, 10,000 followers to activate it for your unpaid posts. You've always, as ever, if you pay people, get the features. But basically, Instagram will now allow any account, as long as you're not a robot and it has its tools to work that out. As long as you're a real human, real musician, obviously we're assuming if you're listening to the show, you can now post a story to your Instagram account, and you can put a link directly onto that story to send people off of Instagram to where you want to send them. So the classic things for a musician being, it's release day, you've just put your new single, your new EP out. You can now send people directly to Spotify. You can post a story going, EP out, and then there's literally a link. You press 2 buttons and boom, they're on your Spotify. Whereas up until this had happened a few days, maybe a few weeks ago now, you literally had to post a story saying become aware of it. You'd then have to say link in bio. They'd then have to click on your profile. They'd then have to click on the link. You'd probably have a link tree because that was the only place that you could put links. So you'd have 7 links. They then had to work out which one of it was. You'd then have to click on it, and then Linktree would go, are you sure you want to go here? And then you'd have to click on it.
And so I'm asleep now.
Exactly. I'm bored of talking about it. Never mind the person that's actually having to do it.
And you very rarely get bored.
Exactly. True that. So going back to one of our catchphrases across all of these things we talk about, make it easy. Social media, our mate Zuck has now made it significantly easier for you to drive your audience on Instagram to other platforms. Now, whether that's Spotify to listen to that music, whether it's you finally got your awesome gear and started your TikTok campaign, so you want to send some of your Instagram followers to your TikToks, you can do that, through to merch, and you've set up your merch store and you've come up with some creative content around it. Before, you'd come up with that creative content of promoting your merch, and then you might lose them by the time you tried to get them to go to the web address that had the merch on, because there's too many clicks in the way. Now, in theory, you can post a selfie of you looking fit in your sweatshirt, and it's like one click away, and they're on the web page ready to buy it. So
that's not going to affect your reach. It's going to affect the conversion rate.
Conversion rate, correct. So let's assume you get, on average, 250 people watching your stories. I don't know, there's a chance that you said new single, new EP out, and only 30 of them like were interested, and you lost half of them by the time they went to click it. Now you might keep 23 of them instead of 15 of them. And
so some things you've done in the last 12 months and you've not got the reaction you're looking for, it's worth trying again now because the conversion rate should be better.
Yeah, and again, it's important not to be entitled with a lot of this stuff. Like, so many social media users are like following so many people. A lot of music fans follow a lot of musicians. Just because your single, EP, whatever release date is really, really important to you, it's not necessarily really important even to your fans, because they love loads of music and there's loads of people releasing music all the time. So...
And often on the same day.
Correct. New Music Friday, classic.
We were talking earlier, you were saying that there's this blur on Thursday into Friday.
Yeah, and there's almost like an indie New Music Friday to some degree now on Wednesdays. New Music Wednesday.
Indie New Music Friday on Wednesday.
It's the classic thing, isn't it? Trying to stand out. But
yeah.
Again, ultimately, you now have a significantly higher chance of sending people to other places you want to send them. That still requires you to be creative with how you do it. That still requires you to put thought into it, not overuse it, because people will get bored. If people don't engage with it once you do it, the algorithms will push your stuff out to less people, and then it's a lose-lose. So you still have to be very thoughtful. And ultimately, if you're balling, spend a load of money on it, because that will definitely do better than not spending money on it. But assuming you have very little budget and you'd much rather put that into smashing the actual music and a more general kind of creation of that music and the promotion around it, a feature that was exclusive to a very select club is basically available to everyone now. And it's a very, I mean, literally, I stand by what I said at the start of this section. I think it's probably the most wanted feature for most social media platforms, and now everyone has it.
Cool.
So that's part one. And then...
That was part one.
Part one. Staying within the cool new things that have happened on social media platforms that will help you make more money or help you drive people to other things you do. Spotify.
Are we calling Spotify a social media platform?
Kind of. Well, this is it. Both things I'm about to say. Spotify and Shopify are both kind of half company websites and half kind of social media platforms. They're a weird grey area. I mean, almost everything in 2021 is kind of a social media platform.
I want to argue with you, but it'll be such a tangent.
Sexy.
Let's just acknowledge
debates.
We have deliberately decided not to have an argument about Shopify.
So very, very quick. Again, why should someone care? Shopify and Spotify have made an official partnership, which basically, in short, means that now on your Spotify profile, you can link directly to merch.
Yeah.
Before, you used to have to, kind of like the Instagram thing we were just talking about, you have to send them to a website. You have to then send them somewhere else. Are you sure you want to leave this website? Whereas now, the majority of people that run merch stores on websites, so I'm not talking about doing like eBay or any of that kind of stuff, like proper merch stores on websites, which are quite easy to make as a musician. The industry leader in that world is Shopify. It has been for a long time, even more so over the past few years. Shopify is basically Spotify for shopping. It's just the go-to place. Everyone uses it. It's quite easy to use. Because they've now got this official partnership, that means if you use that to run your merch, you hook the two of them up, you load up your fan loads up your Spotify profile, they see your picture, you looking fit, your top 5 songs with all your incredibly impressive streaming numbers, your little bit of bio, and there will be 2, 3, 4 of your most recent pieces of merch with a photo of them, obviously whichever photo you uploaded, plus a link to them and the price. So again, making it easy. If someone wanted to buy merch, now they are technically one click away from going to where they buy it, versus whereas before you'd almost be reliant on them going, I like this band enough to see if they have any merch. And
So Spotify's doing quite a good job of becoming the one-stop shop. You got the music, you got the tickets. That happened a couple of years ago.
Was it Songkick or whoever they integrated with?
And now merch, if you use Spotify.
Yeah, and I'd argue that there aren't really... It's kind of like the whole Facebook thing. There's some moral problems with Shopify some people have, but ultimately, if you're just in this, you want the easiest way to increase the chances of people spending money and supporting your music, then Spotify has just made that significantly easier to do. and you know, again, maybe this is just a slight tangent, but it's one that I always try and talk about. Is this is a good thing for small businesses more generally, but I see a lot of musicians do this. Is if you put DM me to order merch or DM me to do this, you're just going to lose so many potential customers. Because fair enough, some people might like the thought of speaking to you, especially if it's like a super fan or something. But a lot of people just want to know the price. We all are nosy. Before we buy something, we want to know how much we might have to pay. If you're going DM me for prices or something, you're losing 8 out of those 10 potential customers because you're only going to get the super fans that want to stalk you.
Is there any research behind that number, or is that just your Nahirny guess?
That is some hyperbole, but if you, I'm pretty sure if you, there isn't in the world of, I don't think so, in the context of music merch, but there are definitely stuff in small businesses, like every small business school ever online, like is like, this is like a cardinal sin. Like you should only do this if it's like, tattoo artists are a good example of where it can be useful, because tattoo artists 9 times out of 10 are very custom, very personal. Yeah. You want to build a personal relationship there. Whereas music merch is kind of the opposite. They've got a box in a warehouse somewhere of 100 t-shirts that they're trying to flog as quickly as possible. So what's the latest on your geniusly trademark stroke untrademark crypto disco metaverse NFT money making Elon friendly world?
I have started my legal action against Mr. M. Zuckerberg. Clearly, he was one of the 72 people who watched the first No Music podcast.
Inspired.
And decided, I'm going to clear this up. And I don't like the idea of this Web3 Bitcoin disco metaverse being called such a mischief of a sentence. And I'm going to go for good old fashion Meta. I'm really impressed he managed to get Meta, but I imagine Facebook's got a pretty hardcore set of lawyers.
You can imagine they like basically kneecap anyone, I guess, in a way.
So I think we said on the first pod, we were kind of acknowledging that there is this crazy world that we don't even know the name of.
Yep.
Slightly ironically, now that Zuckerberg's made that move. Yep. And there's this sense that there's quite a lot of exciting opportunities for musicians, even if they're not immediate. But it's definitely the direction of travel, and one that I feel is, you know, 1, 2, 3 years away, not 2.5 decades away. And I think we said in the first show that we would probably end up talking about NFTs in this show.
Specifically.
As arguably somewhere between the most exciting, most talked about, most immediate thing that is impacting musicians at all levels, whilst there's some mind-blowing things like tokenization, which, you know, if that word grabs your attention, Google RAC and Tape. He did an amazing project. Streaming, I think, is going to be really interesting over the next few years when we have blockchain streaming entities that decide to not take any money and share all the streaming revenue with artists. But right now, it's probably NFTs. And you know, I've chatted off mic a little bit about this to agree that's probably the thing we want to talk about a bit most. We've got a general principle with this show that we want to focus on benefits, not features. So we are not going to have a geek off going, oh, a non-fungible token, secured on a blockchain, verified, but we're not going to do that.
No.
We're going to talk about how is this useful to me as a musician, and when is it going to be useful to me as a musician?
Tell me.
So you were kind of throwing constructive criticism, stroke abuse at me earlier. I mean, just kind of sums up a typical day in our music world. I'm like saying, well, can you sum this thing up in 1 word, 2 words, 3 words? And I was thinking, I mean, if I had to sum up an NFT in 1 word, it would probably be merch. Certainly with a sort of musician's hat on. Maybe if it was a bit broader, if it was a more of a businessman's hat, it might be property. And if you said 2 words, it would be the same next words. It would be digital merch or digital property. So that is actually, if we can have a 30 to 60 seconds like off-piste, that's like at the essence of where this could be life-changing, like for society. It's almost a philosophical point. If you think about it, you can't really own stuff on the internet. Property as a concept doesn't really exist on the internet. And you might be going, oh, I've got my da-da-da. Well, actually, you don't own it. You don't own your Instagram account. You don't own your Facebook account. Domains, yeah. Oh, I own my domain. Oh, I'm pretty sure you get a bill every 2 years. And if you don't pay it, they take it back off you.
Yeah, it's rent.
And that's not just because of big, nasty companies trying to make loads of money out of the little guy. It's also because it's actually really, really difficult concept to master ownership in the internet, where everything can be copy and pasted, downloaded a million billion times.
And the JPEG.
And that's been a big part of the musician struggle from Napster onwards. Before that, musicians and record labels were making loads of money.
Yeah.
Coining it. So there's this almost philosophical thing of how do you actually have property on the internet. And so that's one of your one-liners. NFTs solve that. They create provable, unhackable digital property. And so for musicians, that probably means merch, or at least that's a relatable term right now. So suddenly you can sell stuff, more stuff you couldn't sell before. So, how's this useful to a musician? Well, there's things you can sell now that you couldn't sell before. Mm-hmm. And the moment something is verifiable digital property, that means you can do things like encode resale fees into it. So we've spoken about that. That's one of the really, really exciting things here. If I sell a t-shirt or a hoodie at my gig at Bodega or the Chameleon to 27 of my most hardcore 100 fans that come to that show, that's exciting. Made some money. Probably paid the rent for a month. But I'll never get anything out of that again. Whereas with digital property, with NFTs, if for some reason that fan decides that they hate you, or they're really desperate for money, or you become really successful, so they think the hoodie is worth more money, and they resell it in 18 months' time, you get a percentage of that. So by making digital property a thing, NFTs create the opportunity to sell more things, and when those things are resold, you can make more money.
Forever.
We've talked about on the school tour, there's this stat now that if you're a teenager in a Western country, you've got a 50% chance of living to 100. So you're 18, 19, 20, you're selling a piece of digital merch. It could be getting resold for 60, 70, 80 years, and you could be getting money for it automatically thanks to this crazy technology. So, benefits, not features. Features, the encoded thing in the NFT means that you're going to keep getting money for something you sold years ago.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Tasty.
We spoke last time about this kind of overview of 4 broad areas. We thought this tech was going to help musicians, and we've been trying to kind of make it a bit more relatable and use terms that might really annoy a programmer or annoy a real business person, but are kind of relatable to musicians. So we've got digital merch, which NFT is the most famous, and digital ownership. So moving away from the idea of having a record deal to maybe you do a 25% record deal and then 24% goes to your fans. So they share in you as an artist. 24 is a deliberate number because that makes 49. I think that'll be a frequent number. In other words, at 51%, you keep artistic control. So you get a situation where you can get some money up front, a mixture of crowdfunding from fans and the classic upfront money from a label, which gives you the freedom to then do what you want to do musically, but you keep artistic control. Digital merch, digital ownership, digital fan clubs. What the Royal Mail used to do 20 years ago, sending people a letter, and Facebook has done over the last 10 years with Twitter and Instagram, but are now stopping you and gatekeeping you and charging you to reach your fan bases that you've built up on those platforms. This technology is going to allow you to connect directly for free with no middleman. I've said to you off mic, one of the themes of this new world is going to be cutting out middlemen. Whether that's a record label, whether that's a Zuckerberg, and having direct ownership and direct connection. So digital merch, digital ownership, digital fan clubs, and then digital payments. That's a really big thing. We've talked about how that's going to enable basically online busking more. Suddenly with streams, when 72 people were watching in March or April 2020, and it was nice, and it was good for your ego, but it wasn't necessarily helping you pay those bills that you were really struggling to pay because suddenly you couldn't do gigs anymore. Making it easier to do 50p, £1, £1.50, £2 payments, effectively digital busking. Micro payments make that possible, and this blockchain, digital, disco metaverse is going to make that stuff possible. So one of our favorite things is to use examples. Benefits, not features, and examples. So there's quite a few famous people you may have heard of already, like your Kings of Leon, like your Grimes, like your Studio Aoki,
Tory Lanez,
that have made big money on ETFs. So I think it's useful to read about that.
ETFs.
But did I say ETFs? NFTs, or ETFs, an exchange-traded fund. I'm mixing up my geeky economic terms. Apologise about that. Hello, ladies. So you can Google that quite easily. It is a fair critique, and I think you said some people have said this on social media. Like, is this just another way for successful artists to make more money? What is the relevance to early days musicians like we work with? That's an absolute fair point, and it may prove to be accurate. So I wanted to shout out some examples of artists who were not well known, and then we're going to go into a slightly controversial one. There's a great Vice article on I think she's a Los Angeles-based singer called Latasha. I wrote down her full name, Latasha Alcindor. So put Latasha and Vice and NFTs. Hopefully that article will come up. Yep. It's a really balanced article on is this good or bad for musicians. And she's an example of basically an unsigned musician, and she's made a couple of $1,000s here, a couple of $1,000s there on doing stuff with NFTs. Mm-hmm. So that is someone that a musician at the start of their career can relate to. Yeah. There's also that domino artist. So again, if you put dominoes and NFTs into Google, that will hopefully come up. You found that artist, I think, on Instagram. Twitter. And was it Twitter? Sorry. And then Jax Green is another example of an artist, early days. Now, you may see some of these artists now and they look a bit bigger because they've got a little bit of traction because of being... but they are artists that you can relate to in terms of their level of success. They're still dreaming of... they're probably now making a living from music and feeling slightly less stressed, but they still don't know where the bills are going to be paid in 12, 18 months' time. Yeah. So, and we'll hopefully maybe put those names on the screen. Yeah, of course. So we've shouted out some famous examples. We've shouted out some at the start of their career examples. One of the most famous examples, I said to you the sentence, he's not really famous, and you fell off your chair. Yeah. Blau, who, get ready in your chair, ladies and gentlemen, made $11 million.
11.4 actually.
$11 million on NFTs. I don't know if you registered this on an old record.
Yeah, it's like a few years ago.
It wasn't
a
new release. Yeah, he just did a lot of clever stuff with an album that I think was 3 years old. And I said to you, and he's not really that famous.
Yeah, I mean, I'd challenge your definition of not really that famous, as in could probably play to a few thousand people in quite a few parts of America.
Well, I thought we might play a game here. I thought we might play Spotify monthly listener bingo as a kind of way of quantifying how well-known someone is. That's why I've got this here.
Fair, but you may notice I went for the live reference. I didn't talk about
because live hasn't existed for 18 months. So I thought I'd keep it like in this decade. Basically haven't been live gigs in this decade.
Yeah. Okay.
So how many... I think monthly listeners is one of the closest to an accepted form of sort of measurement right now.
Metric. Agreed, yeah.
So how many monthly listeners do you reckon Blau, we'll put the name on the screen again if you're not ready, has got?
At least a female.
Female, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was as low as 1-2 mil. I think it could go up to 7 or 8 mil. I'd be very, very surprised if it was less than a mil.
We've got 3 other people in the room. Have any of you heard of this guy as a start?
I mean, he is EDM, so he has no British awareness.
I was just, the next question was going to be, do you want to have a guess how many followers or monthly listeners he's got? But if they've never heard of him, they're not going to be able to join into this game of Blau Bingo. So just to re-emphasize, this artist, $11.4 million on NFTs of an old record, 3 years. And his monthly listener number is 2.6 million.
Yeah.
There are Nottingham artists with more than 2.6 million monthly listeners. Who do you think's got the highest monthly listeners of a Nottingham artist?
London Grammar will be flying. I think at one point they were like 25 million.
Okay. My guess would be Young T and Bugsy. Let's have a look what London Grammar are. Anyone else want to get involved in this game of monthly listener bingo?
I mean, Brucey could be up there.
That's a no.
Young T and Bugsy, we were trying to guesstimate.
And you thought London Grammar would have more?
I did. I wouldn't be...
Are you backtracking now?
No, I stand by that was my gut, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
Beep. That's the Sam Nahirny Tesco delivery van going in reverse. Young T and Bugsy. Shout out to Tyler behind the mic. Young T and Bugsy, 4 million.
Interesting. I mean, to be fair, just released a new single as well a few weeks ago, so that could be a part of that. So
this is what I'm saying. Like Blau, obviously successful. 2.5 million listeners is successful, but it's not a sort of unrelatable. Oh, it's okay for him. He's incredibly famous. Yeah. And I have a feeling there is one more that's interesting to see, which is Amber Run, because I know they've got some really good streaming numbers.
Yeah, they've got some.
And using your live thing, Amber Run just sold out Rescue Rooms as an example to see sort of what level they're at and how relatable it is.
Yeah,
their monthly listeners 2.7 million. So Amber Run have more monthly listeners than Blau, who sold an old album for $11.4 million.
Yeah, that's crazy. Ish, yeah, give or take. That's crazy.
So if you haven't heard about Blau, his name's been on the screen at some point now. It's worth Googling and just having your mind blown as to the possibilities
on the screen
that this kind of technology is going to offer. Yes, it's a bit hypey right now. There's probably one or two people who are regretting spending $1.5 million on one old track with some nice artwork. He did some really clever stuff. He's a very shrewd entrepreneurial character, and I don't think that's a coincidence. It's definitely one of those situations where someone who's got a passion for music, a passion for marketing, a passion serendipitously for this new technology, it's all come together. But, you know, if an artist with a monthly listenership equivalent to what in the UK works out selling out the rescue rooms...
Fair point.
Can do that. Can you sell an NFT for $500? Can you sell an NFT for $1,000?
Especially with that stuff you were talking about, there are people actively, Twitter is a great place to find them, like NFT collectors who want to be a part of collecting this early days artist stuff that, you know, it would not be unreasonable for some complete random, you to respond in a Twitter thread with your cool artwork attached to your cool song. And some random dude in New York to spend $2,500 on it just because he wanted to add it to his collection for clout.
Well, I mean, we've said we're going to focus on benefits, not features. What we've just tried to do is focus on precise examples.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of NFTs is if you have we're constantly talking about making a living from music. One of our reference points is constantly the 1,000 fans theory.
Yeah.
One of the things this opens up is if one or two, let's say you've got 174 fans right now, by which I mean people who will go to your gig if it's in your town. They will buy the record maybe a couple of times. That's what Kevin Kelly used to say, writing 1,000 fans. They will buy merch.
Different versions.
You've now got a new thing to sell them. And if 2% of your 174 are quite rich,
win-win,
which means 3.5 humans, they've now got something they could spend 500 quid or $1,000 on. And if you're going, I haven't got any rich fans, well, that's something you could do a plan on. You could start doing gigs in better off areas and make a plan to not just grow your fan base, but actually want to get some more.
Produce a rich old dude.
Yeah, or go down the she makes the money route. You getting that?
I got the
Good, awesome.
terrible joke. Kanye, calm down.
I wasn't even worse would be me singing.
That was a joke.
So yeah, that is one of the another one of the benefits is that it creates these unique things that you can do very creatively, as Blau shows, and then sell to that small percentage of your fan base that either are actually quite well off and or just want to really support you, which is that one line I said to you the other day of changing from consuming merch to investing in artists. And the resale stuff we've already spoken about, that's obviously quite exciting because someone could actually buy some of your stuff not being that into your music, but they just think you've got talent and that you're going to be good, and therefore it's a good investment. Starts to get into status and ego and those kind of things of like, well, okay, you think you're good at spotting artists in the early days, well then why don't you buy one of their early day NFTs
and then become literally.
Yeah. Also, it's going to mean in 2023, 2024, when people are going, oh, I knew they were going to be famous, we can now test them. We go, oh, well, did you buy one of their NFTs then? Yeah. No. Well, why not if you knew they were going to be famous? Because that would have made you loads of money.
Don't believe in it. It's bad for the environment.
Yeah, I didn't want to bastardize the art. That enough on NFTs?
Fine. Well, let's try and bring this home to a final point for musicians' homework. Based on everything we just talked about over the past 10, 15 minutes, there's one thing. Is it read about Blau and how he did and maybe take some inspiration from that? Is that if they're going to do one thing?
If you're going to do one thing, it's probably check out the 3 early days artists that we spoke about because they are relatable examples. If that then connects with you and you think this is an area I should spend some time on because this competes with everything else, sorting out your TikTok strategy, sorting out your Instagram strategy, writing great fucking songs, always the most important thing. But it is the music business, isn't it? It's the music industry, as we say. So a percentage of your time as an artist, certainly in the early days, until you have enough money to pay people to do stuff for you, has to be spent on this businessy stuff. So NFTs are another option now, alongside coming up with a cool new hoodie or TikTok strategy. And if those things do relate, then maybe check out Blau as an example, who properly smashed it, but wasn't mega famous like a Kings of Leon or a Grimes or a Steve Aoki. Yeah. Well, I think they are mates.
They are all mates, yeah. Cool. Well, before we're meant to move on to Nottingham next, the greatest hits of Nottingham. NG. But we have actually had some questions since last time.
Ooh.
But quite a lot of the questions are generally in the world of things that we've already covered. So we had a decent amount of questions that were basically, how do I do better at social media? So obviously listen back to the specific social media section that we've already gone through. Obviously listen back to the previous show. Obviously listen back to all of the advice videos we have on our YouTube channel, a lot of which are dedicated specifically to social media and running. But one specific point that came out of one of the questions, or at least the way it was phrased, was the, how do I beat the ever-changing algorithm, or something to that effect? I just thought that was really interesting just to touch on, because I think people often think of the algorithm as being a bad thing. And whilst I understand that perspective, I disagree, and I think it's quite unhealthy.
Your friend.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but ultimately the algorithms, the piece of tech that is algorithms, exist to give the user, the fan, what it thinks that it wants. It wants them to have the best experience, because ultimately that means they spend the most time on the platform, which means they see the most ads, which means the company that does all that gets the most money. So you got to remember, as much as we hate on Facebook and Instagram and blah, 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 ultimately it wants to give your fan and your user the best experience for them. So don't see the algorithm as this horrible thing. Learn the algorithm and give it what it wants, because then the algorithm will give your shit to your fans if they want it. And this is the thing that we don't like to talk about, is sometimes if your post didn't do very well, it's just because it wasn't very good. You can learn so much of what you want to about post at this time, post it in this format, and a lot of that stuff is really important. And everything from posting square 1 by 1 instead of landscape because it will go out to 23% more people. There is stuff like that, which you know, we'll cover on the show. And if you spend enough time Googling, in fact, a really good resource I'll put it in the description, later.com is where I get over half of my insights from. It's just one site that is just across every trend and every new update and how it's broken down in an easy, accessible way. But yeah, one personal bugbear I really have is people shitting on the algorithm, because I'm like, that's just lazy. That's just a cop-out for your work not being very good, or the fact that you don't want to put the work in.
That's a human trait, isn't it? If we're not succeeding doing something, we want to blame another entity.
And whilst there is the toxic side of, yes, these platforms definitely want you to pay to reach more people, that is bad. The gatekeeping side is bad, but you can't do anything about it. The thing you can do is, with the unpaid posts that you're doing, the organic posts, just give it what it wants. Instagram, sorry, actually is the best example ever right now. They want you to use Reels. Reels are their TikTok ripoff. They have said officially, not even a whole rumor that came through the grapevine, Instagram have officially said they are pushing Reels out to 4 times more people than any other platform. Why would you post video as a... We had this, we were actually trialing some of our new content out. So we made a video that was 1 minute 15 seconds, right? A reel maximum is 60 seconds at the moment. And I made that in mind of it being a reel. I didn't realize it was too long. I was like, oh shit, can't post it as a reel. I'll just post it as a video onto Instagram. It got less than 100 views and it got like 5 likes and it got pushed out to basically no people. The same video pushed out as a reel went to 3,500 people, got like 40 plus likes, and just went to so many more people, and all of the things that come from that. So it is a full-time job being aware of this stuff. Get the greatest hits. You're never going to be perfect until you actually literally hire someone to do it for you. And you shouldn't be spending your money on that at this point in your career. You shouldn't. But you can definitely learn 80-20 rule. You can learn 80% of what you need in 20% of the time. If you just look at... I'll end this on this final precise point. Instagram literally has an account called @creators, which like once a week goes, this is what we're doing this week. Just do that. And your post will probably go out to 5 times more people than you trying to guess and use.
And most platforms have an equivalent.
Yeah.
So that's your 80-20.
Yeah, 100%.
Is see what the platform is actually telling you they want you to do, and then rather than moaning about it, do it.
Yeah. And as a general rule, almost every platform is on video now. So that's the biggest lowest hanging fruit that almost every musician has, is if you're posting a Spotify link 100 times and going, why is no one caring? Work out a way to make it video. We've talked about this, I think, in previous advice videos of like, just take the audio file and put the artwork and maybe put some text on it, because even just that will push it out to so many more people than just posting the Spotify link. There's so many ways. We haven't got time to go into it right now, but just, yeah, I've seen enough people, a mixture of those questions that came in being about the algorithms in kind of a slightly pessimistic way, paired with just how many people I see shitting on the algorithm more generally, when it can be your friend, man. Just got to treat it properly and give it what it wants. Speaking of treating it properly, Nottingham's got a vibrant... It's November.
I know.
We're recording this on the 1st of November.
October was incredible.
Vibrant is our buzzword, but it feels fair for October. Lots going on. I can't remember which one was which. Wigflex happened, Detonate happened, Detonate.
Well, Detonate happened twice. Detonate happened at the end of September.
Detonate
and the
Festival was
end
end of September.
of
Detonate at the
October.
arena.
Yeah, Halloween.
Was this weekend just gone for Halloween?
Yeah.
Gosh, so many. You went to a Nahirny.
Some very confused hot dog sellers at the arena. I'm not sure they'd seen anything
seen that party before.
Quite like that before.
So October was crazy, and you know what? November. You might argue that October had an aura of 2 years no gigs. Let's pile them up, but you might think November's not going to look like that. November carries on this complete chaos in the best way possible of so many big, significant fun across the genre Nottingham gigs. We've
Really
got
significant.
2 more arena shows.
Yeah.
As we record this, London Grammar taking on the arena tomorrow. And right now, looks like they're on the last few hundred tickets. And also...
By the time this comes out, London Grammar could have actually played to a sold-out arena.
10,000 capacity.
Which only Jake Bugger's done of the Nottingham artists.
Correct. And then later at the end of this month, Sleaford Mods are having a go. Sleaford Mods are playing the arena.
Sleaford Mods advertising on buses a show at the arena. Mind blown.
Beautiful. Welcome to 2021, boys and girls. And then we've got everything from Chloe Rogers is playing her debut full band headline Bodega show this Friday. Who else have we got? We've got a few other significant gigs coming up.
Crazy P at Rescue Rooms.
That's it, 12th. I think that's Friday the 12th.
I think it's the 11th, actually, because I think it's the same day. Because we're going to be at Inspire Youth Arts, because, you know, that's all about artists literally at the start of their career, just out of the womb. So big gut to Miss Crazy P, because that's right up my funky street.
Did you just go straight out the womb? I'm gutted to be missing the crazy penis. Is that literally what you just said?
You're not allowed to say the ENIS. That's been banned.
Since about 2003.
As part of them actually getting some more mainstream exposure.
Sorry.
That's an interesting branding case study. I think Alice Robbins has got her Bodega show in November.
She's smashing it. She's doing a proper, I think it's 4 or 5 day, proper good sized venues across the country. Yeah. Taking Nottingham. It's like I think at the Nottingham show she's got Cat Milk supporting as well, so that'd be really, really cool.
Isaac Anderson.
Debut headline.
Is it Rough
full
Trade?
Band show at Rough Trade. I want to say the 17th. Tory Sheard and Drew Thomas supporting on the 17th at Rough Trade, so that'd be good. That's a strong triple.
That's a strong
Very
lineup.
strong.
Yes, there's some big gigs.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy. And
from Rough Trade to the arena.
And
twice.
Also, we're not going to be one of those promoters that only talk about our events, but we do have a very wholesome, helping, free event at the end of this month, which I think we should. Our workshop is at the end of this month, boys and girls. An entire free panel Q&A dedicated to it at Metronome, and not just that. Not only do you get to see our joyous faces telling you about these topics, which you've somehow made it to the end of this podcast listening to, but there is also the advice for coming back at the start and at the end, which is basically a Freshers Fair for musicians, featuring everyone from Musicians Union and PRS Foundation. People like PRS giving literally 15 grand to musicians early days to help them
literally throwing the cash around.
Throwing them, go make
the Crystal Maze
at that cool studio, make sure you pay them properly type vibe. Through to DHP, local team are going to be there telling you how you can get gigs at places like the Bodega and support sorts of places like Rescue Rooms. We've approached basically everyone in Nottingham that can help.
We invite every musician helping entity, don't we?
Correct.
Whether they can make it, be bothered,
COVID,
etc.
So many things.
That's different.
But what we can say is, with quite a lot of love and effort, this event is being made to be the one-stop shop where you can learn about the things that can help you for free, meet a bunch of people that can help you for free, meet a bunch of other musicians in a networking way that you might not have really been able to do for about 2 years for free. And also, it's just nice to be in a room with other musicians and remember why you do music, because it's meant to be fun. And that's Tuesday the 30th of November. So get that in your diary, kids.
Bong.
That